Good morning, everyone. In that moment, I understood. Okay. Now, there's more to that statement. You kind of wonder what the rest of the statement might be. Now, in that moment, I understood. What's the rest of the statement based on the first reading and the gospel today? Can you figure it out? In that moment, I understood. We'll get to that in just a moment. Reviewing last week, okay, our re-engaging in ordinary time. And in the gospel, Jesus gave a couple of parables, and the parables were all oriented really towards kind of an experience of growth in farming or planting, however you want to unfold it. You take the seed, you place it in the ground, cover it up, water it, fertilizer, you tend it, all of these types of things. The way I unfolded the gospel message was this: me did or we did. It's extremely important with regards to you personally, me personally, our families, our work centers, and our parish. How is it that those things that you are involved with, what's your disposition? It's extremely important to take that time in reflection, because you're not going to come to an understanding of that unless you take that time of reflection. And you're going to land on one or the other. Either me did or we did. Me did is I did it. I did this for the family. See the good that's happening in the family? I did it. The good that's happening at work? I did it. The good that's happening in the parish? I did it. Okay? Or there's a general disposition of we did. Okay? We did this together. Fundamentally, God gives us the gift of life. Who here has willed themselves into being? No, you did not will yourself into being. You're incorrect. All right, but thank you, Liam, for that invitation. None of us willed ourselves into being. None of us keeps ourselves into being. That's God willing us into being. Who here has given ourselves gifts and talents? Okay, none of us. You've all been given your gifts and talents. Who here has been given their circumstances in life? Okay, by the way, most of us here were born into the United States, born into the greatest opportunity in the world. Okay, who here willed themselves to those things? The reality is that none of us. Now, you've taken the gifts and talents that God has given you and you've exercised your will. So anything that we do that is good is 100% God's and it's kind of ours. Okay, I'm saying that in that regard because it is ours truly to that extent in which we have we've exercised the gifts and talents that He's given us, we've exercised our will, we've engaged in that, and we're bringing forth a good work. So it truly is our good work. There's nothing wrong with taking joy in that, in what we have been able to do. But we need to understand that it's a we did experience, not me did. I didn't do. There is no such thing as a self-made man. There is no such thing as a self-made woman. Doesn't happen. Okay? It's a matter of cooperating with the great gifts that God gives us and that we are able to bring forth a goodness. That is extremely important because if we don't come from that disposition, then we're going to live in an illusion. And we're going to miss the opportunity that's being invited for us to participate. So again, that's what we talked about last week. Today, that phrase. In that moment, I understood. What's the rest of it? Based on the readings, the first reading and the second in the gospel, it ends this way. In that moment, I understood that I don't understand. In that moment, I understood that I don't understand everything. See, we have in this first reading Job. Job is filled with vigor in this particular point. And he says, answer me. See, a lot has happened in Job's life. He's been very faithful, and yet a lot has happened. And he doesn't understand. And he's stepping forward in vigor. And he's pointing to God, and he says, you answer me. The disciples in the gospel, the water's pouring over, and the disciples, the apostles, come to Jesus, and they say, answer us. The water is coming in. Don't you care? Don't you care? I think it can all come together in one of my little lines here, the favorite movies of the last 25 years. Now I'm going to say a phrase, and I'm going to point to you. When I point to you, you say the phrase back. You can say it with gusto if you want, or you can just say it, or you can mumble it, or you can not say it at all, but you can think about it in your head, or you can say, I have no idea what he's talking about. All right? So either way, all right? But I'm going to say it, and I'm going to point to you, and you say the phrase that you think that is the return. I want the truth. Oh, so we've got some fans here. All right. That's good. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. All right. Now, that is what God says to you and to me. Now, he doesn't say it as Jack Nicholson says it. All right. So, he's not Colonel Jessup. He doesn't have that disposition. So, but he says, you can't. You can't handle the fullness of what I have for you. Just receive what I have at this time. And trust me. Because you can't handle the truth, not the fullness of it right now. See, Job loses it and says to God, who do you think you are? All this time I've been faithful, and all these things are happening to me. And he says, God says, oh, Job, were you there when I created the world? Go ahead and tell me. Go ahead, Job. Explain to me how the world was created. Go ahead. Oh, you can't do it? No, you can't. Because your intellect is finite. My intellect, says God, is infinite. You can't understand. Reasonably, we can't understand what God has fully for us. Do you know what comprehend means? If you've studied Latin or if you know the etymology of this word, comprehend means to wrap your arms completely around it. In other words, you have full possession of what that means. You and I cannot comprehend, we cannot comprehend what God has for us completely. Now, can we understand some of it? Absolutely. And are we supposed to understand it? Are we supposed to discern? Are we supposed to pray? Are we supposed to go to Mass? Are we supposed to go to confession? Are we supposed to pray the Rosary? Are we supposed to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet? Are we supposed to turn to God each day and give Him our feelings and our thoughts? Are we supposed to engage in conversation? Yes. And He'll lead us and guide us. And we'll understand, you and I will understand a portion of what God is doing in our life. Are we going to understand everything? Absolutely not. Why? Because your intellect and my intellect are finite, and God's intellect is infinite. And that's ultimately what He's saying to Job, and that's ultimately what He's saying to the disciples. You have to trust me from the standpoint of faith. Now, let's review faith. Faith is this. Oh, I don't understand it, so I guess I'll just go forward. Okay, how many times have I told you that that is not faith in the church? Faith in the church is not, well, I don't understand it, so I guess I'll just go forward. Faith in the church is a supernatural capacity to know God. Faith is a supernatural capacity to know God. We know through the natural gift of reason, okay? And knowing in faith is consistent with knowing in reason, but it goes beyond that. Have you had an encounter with the living God through Teens Encounter Christ Retreat? Have you had an encounter with God through Curcio? Have you had an encounter with God in college through Kairos Retreat? Have you had an encounter with God through Christ Renews His Parish? Have you had a profound encounter with God through the loss of a loved one in your life? Have you had an encounter with God through just a powerful, difficult situation that has happened, a tragedy? Whatever it is, God has reached through our life and He has embraced us. Personal, passionate, unrelenting love He has for each one of us. And He pursues us in that way. I'm closing my, no, I don't want God, no. You know, you can say it, whatever you want. He's still going to pursue you and me. No matter how much we close ourselves to Him, He still pursues us with a personal, passionate, unrelenting love. And those questions will happen, by the way. And it comes down to this, an understanding of God's permissive love, His will, and His perfect will for you and me. His perfect will for you and me is for you to know, for me to know how much we're deeply loved, how much He has sacrificed, that we had come to those realizations, that we would be impelled from within, as the second reading says, to give. And to also understand that anything bad that happens is not from God. Let me say that again. Anything bad that happens is not from God. That's not His perfect will. It's His permissive will. Those things happen because of humanity, because of original sin, and still the exercise of human will that's contrary to God's. Again, it comes forward. I want the truth. It's good for you and me to realize that we feel that way. When something bad happens, don't we normally blame God? I mean, let's be honest. I do. I'll say it's your fault. It's not reasonable, but it's understandable to feel that way. And that's the point of today. That we understand a portion of it, but we don't understand everything. On the foundation of the gift of faith that he gives us, those moments where we have come to know his love, to absolutely know it, it's on that, even though we don't understand everything, that we're still going to move forward down that path of love that he has for you and me.